Anthony Servino here at the Face Off Sports Network with my top starts and sits for NFL Week 5. But before we get started, let's recap last week. Out of my 3 starts, Zach Moss, Aaron Jones, Tony Pollard, they were all hits. Of my 3 sits, 2 out of the 3 were hits. J.K. Dobbins, Zamir White, both under 10 PPR points, while Rachaad White just goes over that 10 PPR point threshold by a hair. Great week, 5-1. Let's build on the success. Entering week 5, here's my first start at the running back position, Najee Harris. And I get it. Najee Harris is a tough player to start in our lineups. Najee Harris has been a disappointment despite the fact that he's getting 19 and a half touches per game. That's 91st percentile using the tools at rotowire.com. He's getting 14.6% of his team targets. He's being targeted on 23.8% of his routes. And he's even running fairly well. 76.8% of his yards are after contact, which is 92nd percentile. The issue with Najee Harris isn't the touches. It isn't the opportunity. It isn't the snap share. He's dominating it all. He's not scoring the football. And what's really salvaged the past 2 games is that he's had 5 and 6 targets in weeks 3 and 4, respectively. Tough matchups overall. In weeks 1 to 4, 3 of his matchups were on the road. In weeks 1 to 4, he played top 15 defenses when it comes to containing enemy running backs. Now, Najee Harris gets the Dallas Cowboys. This is a proverbial dream matchup for any running back because Dallas has been absolutely smashed and gashed. Even Jerome Ford in week 1 goes for 18.9. We know Kamara and Derrick Henry went ballistic. The only back that they seemingly shut down was Devin Singletary. And let's face it, the Giants look pretty with Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson, but their offense is not that good. So it doesn't shock me that Dallas managed to get it together. But we know if you're a good running team and you have an above average running back, and I believe Najee Harris is better than what consensus thinks he is, I'm expecting a big game out of Najee Harris. And I believe Najee Harris finally gets into the end zone in week 5. Let's go to my next start, Travis Etienne. And Travis Etienne, he's been a big-time disappointment this season. Most of the time, a second-round draft pick, and he has not lived up to his draft capital. Under 14.8 PPR points in every game played this year, at a season-low 7 PPR points last week against the Houston Texans. Houston's defense is really good. You can throw on them, but they're amongst the league's best when it comes to containing enemy running backs. They are giving up the 7th fewest fantasy points per game to the position, and they did a really good job limiting Travis Etienne. He still is getting at least 12 touches in every game played, which is not the volume we expected from him, but is still good enough for Travis Etienne to pop in fantasy. What's really hurting him is the fact that the targets are not there. He's had 2 games this year with at least 4 targets, and the other 2 under 3. So that's what's really hurting Etienne this year, the touches and the targets. As a runner overall, Travis Etienne is still playing good football at 21.3 broken tackle rate, 70.6 yards after contact, a 4.3% rushing touchdown rate, which is 82nd percentile. He's even doing fairly well as a receiver. He's still getting 12.2% of team targets, despite the fact that he's not getting consistent 4 to 5 on a weekly basis. But this is the game. If Travis Etienne can put it together against the Indianapolis Colts, he could potentially pop this week. Indy's defense, they have holes all over the place. Joe Mixon, Josh Jacobs, both scored over 15 PPR points against them, while Roschon Johnson and Najee Harris went for over 10. This is a familiar opponent for Jacksonville. Travis Etienne in his career has normally played well and showed up in these matchups against the Indianapolis Colts. In fact, Travis Etienne, if we go back into history, Travis Etienne, 20.3, 16.4, 10.8. So he has a high floor and has even popped in his past three matchups against the Colts. And if there was ever a get-right game for Travis Etienne, it is this one. Let's go to another start. Rhamondrew Stevenson. He's one of my favorite running backs this week. Now, we have to bring up the bad. Rhamondrew Stevenson has now fumbled every game this year. He has lost a fumble in each of his past two games. He could potentially play himself out of a job, but right now he's the guy, and we have to treat him as such. Now, 3 out of 4 games this year, Rhamondrew Stevenson at least 10 PPR points. In the first 2 games, he looked like the real deal, giving us 21 and 17. As the matchups get tougher, it gets tougher for Ram. Why? Because this is still an offense in progress for New England. And if they can the enemy defense shuts you down, Rhamondrew Stevenson can get phased out really quick. The good thing for Rhamondrew Stevenson, as he gets the Miami Dolphins, the Dolphins are amongst the league's worst at stopping enemy running backs. Even if you watched the game the other night, Tennessee couldn't get much going, and Tony Pollard still managed a high-quality fantasy outing, and I expect the same from Ram Stevenson. Rhamondrew Stevenson, in his career, up and down games against Miami, but again, look at the quarterbacks he's played with in his career so far. Right now, it is probably the best situation when we look at Jacoby Brissett and the potential of Drake May. It's been that bad for Rhamondrew Stevenson. But as long as he's getting the touches, and he is, 18.5 touches per game, 12.5% of his team targets, and he's also running really well. 26.2 broken tackle rate, 80.1% yards after contact. He's doing really well, all things considered. We have to treat Rhamondrew Stevenson as a matchup-based start until this offense begins to click week in and week out. So this week, he has the matchup against Miami, and I think we could safely and confidently start Rhamondrew Stevenson in our fantasy lineups. Miami has given up a high floor, at least 11.9 PPR points to 5 different running backs, and at least 13.9 PPR points to the enemy team's RB1. Etienne in week 1, James Cook, Charbonnet, and Tony Pollard last week, and they're progressively getting worse as the season goes on. Let's go to a few of my sits before we wrap up, and we are going to start with Devin Singletary. And Devin Singletary, number 1, he's dealing with the groin injury and on the injury report. So even if he plays, he could have limited action. Number 2, he gets Seattle. Seattle is a middle-of-the-pack matchup, but they've played exceptionally well at home this season, contrary to how it's been in the past. In the past, Seattle, you can run on them at home. That is not the case in 2024 for the most part. Devin Singletary in 4 games, he's given us 2 nice games over 16 PPR points. In the other 2, 9.2 and 4.8. This is another guy. He's getting the touches, only 16.5 touches per game. Not as efficient, only 65.2 yards after contact, but we are not drafting or starting Devin Singletary because he's an efficient running back. He's never been an efficient running back. He's an okay receiver out of the backfield. We start Devin Singletary this year because they don't really have anybody else to give those touches to. So when we get a tougher matchup on paper, when we get a guy who's not the greatest running back in the world, he's not getting a ton of targets, and this team isn't on the goal line very much, just spells a recipe for disaster, which is why I am sitting Devin Singletary against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. Let's go to another sit. Rico Dowdle, Ezekiel Elliott. We can once again sit Cowboys running backs. Now, Rico is coming off of his best game of the year against the New York Giants. 11 for 46 on the ground, catches only target for a 15-yard touchdown. In fact, he's had 2 games, at least 5 targets this year. But he's also had 3 games with under 9.9 PPR points. This Dallas running back room is not very good. The offensive line, normally Dallas has an outstanding offensive line. It is still starting 2 rookies. This offensive line is going to get better, but it sometimes takes a half a season for everything to gel. Just like I said about Devin Singletary, Rico Dowdle isn't great. He's not a great running back. He's not elusive, and it shows with his running back metrics. What saves Rico Dowdle is the receiving work out of the backfield. And he got lucky last week because the past games before that, he had 5 and 5 targets. Last week, he only had 1, but he did catch a touchdown on that. So we're putting Rico Dowdle in our fantasy football lineups with the hope that he gets 5 targets. This week against the Steelers, this is one of the easiest fades of the week. Whether it's Rico Dowdle or Ezekiel Elliott, these players are going to be extremely touchdown dependent. The Steelers' defense is one of the best in the NFL. It's a top 4 unit in containing enemy running backs. The Steelers have not let anyone get going on them. And I don't think Rico Dowdle or this version of Ezekiel Elliott has what it takes. Now, granted, we did see Jonathan Taylor go for 19.8 PPR points last week. He went for 88 yards and a touchdown with another 20 yards as a receiver. We saw Bijan go for 16.1 on the season opener. But Rico Dowdle isn't even on the same planet when it comes to skill set or run blocking offensive line as the Atlanta Falcons or the Indianapolis Colts. We are sitting very comfortably Rico Dowdle in week 5. Let's go to my final sit. James Conner. Conner has played outstanding football this season. In 3 out of 4 games, he's popped for at least 17.3 PPR points. When it comes to what this guy does best, score touchdowns, he has a 4.7% rushing touchdown percentage. He's outstanding as a receiver out of the backfield. 11 yards after the catch, which is 90th percentile. 17.5 touches per game. 18.8% broken tackle rate. James Conner, despite his age, is playing outstanding football. However, I don't love this matchup against the 49ers. Now, on paper, the 49ers are giving up some production to enemy running backs. What I don't like is that historically, James Conner is normally bottled up by the 49ers. James Conner has had some nice games. He's also had some disappointing games. And this is a desperate 49ers team. They can't afford to let James Conner get going and open things up for Kyler Murray. I'm expecting this 49ers defense to emphasize containing James Conner and making Kyler Murray and the rest of this offense one-dimensional, because that seems like how you shut the Arizona Cardinals down. I am sitting James Conner with caution because obviously he has it in him to pop at any time. He has it in him to score at any time because of the amount of goal line opportunities he receives. James Conner, yes, he's had 3 rushes inside the 5-yard line out of the 4 games this year. He also has 15 red zone touches. But once again, this 49ers defense is a different animal. This is a desperate team. They need a win. And I think James Conner could become a casualty to the 49ers in week 5. I'm Anthony Servino, the Face Off Sports Network. Remember, if you like content like this, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and the notification icon so you can be notified anytime we go live to answer your questions or drop videos just like this. If you have a start-sit question or anything else, drop it in the comments section. One of us, including myself, will get back to you in a timely manner.